Blanca Hicks had exactly 16 minutes before federal agents shut down her company permanently. And the only people offering to help were three little girls whose father she'd mocked hours earlier as just an ordinary janitor. But the moment those triplets' fingers touched the keyboard, speaking about multi-threaded quantum worms and recursive encryption like they'd written the textbook themselves, Blanca realized the man cleaning her floors at midnight was hiding a past that would either save her empire or destroy everything she thought she understood about genius, sacrifice, and the price of running from guilt. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Miss Hicks, the small voice said. We know how to stop it. Blanca Hicks spun around, ready to destroy whoever dared interrupt. Her tech empire was dying in real time, billions evaporating, 24 elite cybersecurity experts paralyzed, federal agents minutes from seizing everything. And now 3 little girls in matching school uniforms stood in her crisis room, claiming they could solve what the best minds in the industry couldn't. Children. Actual children. The daughters of a janitor, no less. But she had nothing left to lose. When a ruthless CEO gave 3 8-year-olds 16 minutes to save her company, she never imagined they would succeed. When a janitor walked in and saw his daughters surrounded by frantic executives, he never imagined his carefully buried past would be exposed. And when those triplets reached for those keyboards, they never imagined that one brave moment would shatter a woman's walls, heal a father's guilt, and rebuild a broken family. 42 minutes earlier, Blanca had been reviewing acquisition targets in her glass-walled office, immaculate in her charcoal power suit. Her dark hair pulled back severely, every strand in place. Everything in her world was controlled, calculated, unshakable. Then her CTO crashed through the door, his face drained of all color. We've been breached. It's catastrophic. The operations center was pure chaos. Wall-sized monitors flashed crimson warnings. 24 specialists hunched over workstations, fingers flying across keyboards, sweat dripping despite the ice-cold air conditioning. The attack, sophisticated and merciless, was systematically destroying everything. Client funds vanishing, satellite systems corrupting, government contracts dissolving. Status, Blanca barked, her voice cutting through the panic. We can't contain it, her lead security architect gasped, voice breaking. It's a multi-threaded quantum worm, self-replicating. Every firewall we deploy, it rewrites itself around. We've never encountered anything like this. Blanca watched the damage counter climb. 3 billion, 4 billion, everything evaporating while the most expensive minds in cybersecurity scrambled like helpless children. Find the source, she snapped. Isolate it. Shut it down. Do something. But nothing worked. The worm moved like liquid mercury, always adapting, always 3 steps ahead, mocking their expertise with elegant precision. Everything she'd sacrificed. Every relationship she'd burned. Every friendship she'd let wither. Every night she'd chosen her empire over a life. It was all crumbling in real time. And for the first time in her career, Blanca Hicks was powerless. Danny Reyna wasn't supposed to be at Hicks Technologies that Wednesday afternoon. He worked the graveyard shift, midnight to 8 a.m., mopping floors and emptying trash bins while the building slept. The invisible man. The ghost who kept things clean while the brilliant minds were safely home in bed. But his colleague had called in sick, desperate, and Danny couldn't say no to covering the day shift. The triplets had been bouncing off the walls all morning. Daddy, we finally get to see where you work, Erica had squealed, her braids swinging wildly. Please, 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 Emily and Edna had chanted in perfect harmony, their matching smiles impossible to resist. It was their school break, and they'd been asking for months. Danny had run out of excuses to say no. At 9:30 a.m., he walked into the gleaming lobby with Erica, Emily, and Edna flanking him, their matching backpacks and navy uniforms making them look even more identical than usual. The building during business hours felt alien. Sharp suits, clicking heels, the electric hum of productivity charging through every corridor. Nothing like the empty, silent halls he knew. He took them to the small janitor's supply room on the 3rd floor. Worn couch, scratched table, coffee maker that had seen better decades. "Stay here, okay?" Danny knelt to their level, making sure they understood. "I need to grab cleaning supplies from the basement. I'll be right back. Do not wander off." "We promise, Daddy," Erica said solemnly. "Cross our hearts," Emily added. "Hope to die," Edna finished. Danny kissed each of their foreheads and headed down the hallway. The triplets lasted exactly 6 minutes. "Do you hear that?" Erica whispered, tilting her head toward the door. Emily nodded. Raised voices, running footsteps, something electric and wrong crackling through the air. "We should stay here," Edna said, but she was already standing. "Just a quick look," Emily agreed. They slipped out and followed the sound up the stairs. The commotion grew louder with each floor. Shouts, rapid keyboard clicks, tension so thick you could taste metal on your tongue. At the doorway of a massive operations center, they stopped. Dozens of people crowded around enormous screens. Code, beautiful and complex and deadly, cascaded across the displays like digital rain. At the center stood a woman with dark hair pulled back tight. Her face pale, her hands clenched so hard her knuckles had gone white. Erica, Emily, and Edna understood immediately. The patterns, the panic, the desperation. This was a quantum-level cyber attack, and it was winning. They exchanged that look, the one only triplets could share. An entire conversation in 3 pairs of identical eyes. Should we? What if they don't listen? What if Daddy finds out? But Daddy always said to help when we can. Erica remembered the evening last month when they'd been walking home and saw an elderly woman struggling with grocery bags. Danny had stopped immediately, gathering bags without hesitation. "We help when we can, girls. Always. That's what makes us human." Decision made. They stepped into the room. Edna reached up and tugged the dark-haired woman's sleeve. Blanca looked down, startled. 3 little girls with matching braids stood before her, completely out of place in her war room. "Yes?" Blanca snapped, her patience worn to nothing. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "We can help," Edna said quietly. "What?" "The worm," Erica added, pointing at the screen. "We can stop it." For a moment, Blanca could only stare. These were children, no more than 8 years old, barging into a corporate catastrophe with backpacks and juice boxes. "This isn't a playground," Blanca said, her voice dropping to dangerous levels. "Where is your father? How did you even get up here?" "Our dad works here," Emily said quickly. "He's getting supplies." "But please, ma'am, really, we can help. That's a multi-threaded quantum worm with recursive encryption protocols. It's actually brilliant design. But there's a pattern to..." "A what?" A senior engineer spun around in his chair, eyes wide. "The worm rewrites itself every 34 seconds, Erica explained, her 8-year-old voice matter of fact. "That's why you can't isolate it using traditional quarantine methods. But it leaves trace signatures in the buffer memory cache. If you track the ghost packets instead of chasing the active code, you can predict where it'll resurface and build a containment cage around it before it adapts. The room went dead silent. Every head turned. 3 little girls were speaking like they'd authored a textbook on advanced quantum cybersecurity. "Your father works here," Blanca repeated slowly, her mind reeling. "Doing what?" "He's a janitor," Edna said simply. "Night shift, usually. He's covering for someone today." The CTO stepped forward, staring at the triplets like they'd materialized from another dimension. "How old are you 3? 8, they said in perfect unison. "Let them try," someone called from the back of the room. And that's where everything changed. Where Blanca Hicks's carefully controlled world shattered. Where Danny Reyna's buried past was about to explode into the light. And where 3 brilliant little girls were about to prove that genius doesn't care about age, position, or anyone's expectations. Blanca stared at the 3 little girls, her mind warring between desperation and disbelief. Every instinct screamed that this was insane. Children. 8-year-old children claiming they could solve what her entire elite team couldn't. But the damage counter was still climbing. 5 billion now. 6. "Fine," she snapped. "You have 15 minutes. Then security escorts you out." The triplets didn't wait for further permission. They moved as one unit toward the nearest workstation, the engineer stumbling backward to give them space. Erica climbed onto the chair first, her small fingers flying across the keyboard with terrifying precision. Emily pulled up a second terminal. Edna commandeered a third. And then the room watched something impossible unfold. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, dancing across keys like concert pianists. Code streamed across the screens faster than most people could read. They spoke to each other in rapid-fire technical shorthand, finishing each other's sentences, anticipating each other's moves. "Packet loop at node 743, Erica called out. "Confirmed? Recursive pattern Delta 9, Emily responded, her fingers never slowing. "Tracing the tunnel now," Edna murmured, her eyes locked on cascading data. "False flag signature. Quantum masking protocol. Someone's hiding behind a government server." The senior security architect leaned forward, squinting at the screens. That's impossible. We scanned those nodes 12 times. "There's nothing." "There is," Erica said, not looking up. "You were looking for standard encryption. This is quantum layered. See? Right there. The signature repeats every 34.7 seconds. It's beautiful, actually. Whoever designed this is brilliant. But predictable," Emily added. "And arrogant," Edna finished. "They assumed no one would think to check the ghost memory." Around the room, jokes died on lips. Smirks faded. Engineers who'd been whispering and chuckling moments ago now stood frozen, watching 3 children perform digital surgery on a system that had defeated them completely. Blanca moved closer, her heart hammering. She couldn't understand half of what she was seeing, but she recognized mastery when she witnessed it. The triplets worked with the kind of fluid coordination that took teams years to develop. No hesitation, no second guessing, just pure, instinctive brilliance. "The worm has 17 active threads," Erica explained, her voice steady and calm. "Each one replicates independently, but they all report back to a central command node. That's the weakness. The designer was too elegant. They wanted symmetry. So we don't chase the threads," Emily continued, pulling up a new window filled with code that looked like digital poetry. "We isolate the command node, starve it of feedback." "And the threads collapse on themselves," Edna said, her fingers creating what looked like a cage of light around a pulsing red signature on the screen. "Containment protocols deploying," Erica announced. The main display shifted. The cascading red warnings began to slow, stutter. One by one, the threads turned yellow, then amber, then green. "Funds freezing," an engineer whispered, his voice cracking. "Account stabilization in progress." Another screen lit up with notifications. "Federal lockout protocols canceling, system integrity restoring." The damage counter stopped climbing, held steady, then began to reverse as the triplets executed recovery sequences with the same terrifying precision. Blanca's CTO stared at his tablet, his hand trembling. "Satellite feeds coming back online. Client systems reconnecting. This is 16 minutes, Blanca whispered, checking her watch with numb fingers. 16 minutes. Her team of 24 experts, each with advanced degrees and years of experience, each paid 6 figures or more, had failed for over an hour. 3 8-year-old girls in school uniforms had just saved her entire empire in 16 minutes. The final screen turned green. The worm's signature flatlined. Dead, contained, neutralized. The operations center fell into stunned silence. Erica, Emily, and Edna climbed down from their chairs, adjusting their matching backpacks with identical movements. They looked completely unbothered, as if they'd just finished a simple homework assignment rather than performing a miracle. "The origin trace is saved in the recovery file," Edna said, pointing at one of the screens. "You'll want to report that to the authorities. It's someone you know." Before Blanca could ask what that meant, the door burst open. Danny Reyna stumbled into the room, his face flushed, his breath coming in gasps. His eyes went wide with horror as he took in the scene. His 3 daughters, surrounded by dozens of executives and engineers, standing in front of massive screens still glowing with code. "Oh, God," he gasped. "Girls, I am so sorry. I told them to stay put. I was only gone 20 minutes. I'm so sorry, Miss Hicks. They didn't mean to intrude. We'll leave right now. Right now. I promise this won't—" "Stop," Blanca said, her voice cutting through his panic like a blade. Danny froze mid-apology, his eyes darting between his daughters and the CEO whose company he cleaned every night. Blanca stepped forward, her sharp gaze moving from the triplets to their father and back again. Her mind was reeling, trying to process what she'd just witnessed, trying to reconcile the impossible reality in front of her. She looked directly at Danny, her voice steady but filled with something dangerous, something that demanded truth. How did they learn this? The color drained from Danny's face, his mouth opened, closed. His hands trembled at his sides, and in that moment, Blanca knew. Whatever answer was coming, it was going to change everything. Danny stood frozen in the center of the operations center, surrounded by executives in $1,000 suits, staring at him like he was a puzzle they couldn't solve. He looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred from years of hard labor. The hands of a man who mopped floors and scrubbed toilets while the world slept. But they hadn't always been like this. "I used to be an engineer," he said quietly, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. "Lead systems architect for Meridian Defense Technologies. I designed the core infrastructure for the federal cyber defense grid. Back when I was someone else." The room's silence deepened. Several engineers exchanged shocked glances. Blanca's CTO stepped forward, his eyes widening with recognition. "Wait, Danny Reyna. Daniel Reyna. You're the Reyna? The one who created the adaptive firewall protocol that's still industry standard? You disappeared 8 years ago. Everyone thought you were recruited by some classified government program or—" "I quit," Danny interrupted, his voice cracking. I walked away from all of it. Why? Blanca asked, her tone sharp but not unkind. Danny closed his eyes. The memory was always there, waiting, a wound that never fully healed. 8 years ago, I was working on the biggest project of my career, a system that would protect critical infrastructure from quantum-level attacks. I was obsessed. Worked 18, 20-hour days. My wife, Sarah, His voice broke. She begged me to come home one night. It was our anniversary. She said she'd drive to her sister's, pick up the gift she'd left there, and we'd celebrate late. Just please, she said. Please be home when I get back. The triplets stood perfectly still, their small hands clasped together. They'd heard this story before, but it never got easier. I told her I needed 2 more hours. Just 2 more hours to finish a system upgrade. She said okay. She always said okay. Danny's hands trembled. She was driving home on Highway 95 when a drunk driver crossed the median. Head-on collision. She died before the ambulance arrived. Someone in the room inhaled sharply. I got the call at 11:47 p.m., right as I was celebrating the successful system deployment. Champagne in the conference room. Everyone congratulating me on my genius. The word came out bitter. I left that building and never went back. Didn't answer calls, didn't respond to emails. I'd built systems to protect millions of people, but I couldn't protect the one person who mattered most. Blanca felt something crack inside her chest. That familiar ache of sacrificing everything for success, of choosing work over life, over love. The triplets were 6 months old, Danny continued. 3 babies who'd just lost their mother because their father chose code over family. I couldn't touch a computer for 2 years. Couldn't even look at technology without seeing her face. So you became a janitor, Blanca said softly. I became a father, Danny corrected. The only thing I had left that mattered. I took the first job that would let me work nights so I could be with them during the day. Rock-bottom wages, no prestige, no recognition, just me and my girls. Erica reached up and took her father's hand. Emily and Edna flanked his other side. But they were curious, Danny said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips, always asking how things worked, why things connected. I couldn't help myself. I started teaching them. Small things at first, then bigger concepts. They absorbed everything like sponges. They'd solve problems for fun that would stump graduate students. You taught them everything you knew, Blanca said, understanding dawning. I found joy in watching them discover what I'd lost, Danny admitted. They didn't carry my guilt, didn't carry my ghosts. For them, it was pure, beautiful, and it kept Sarah alive, in a way. She would have loved seeing them grow into who they are. Around the room, the engineers who'd whispered and smirked earlier now couldn't meet Danny's eyes. The security guard who'd moved to escort the girls out stared at his shoes. Blanca felt her own words from earlier echo in her mind like accusations. The daughters of an ordinary janitor. Kids like you don't belong here. She'd built her empire on ruthless intelligence and cold calculation, sacrificing relationships and humanity in pursuit of success. And here stood a man who'd achieved more than she ever had, lost everything that mattered, and still found a way to raise 3 extraordinary children with more grace than she'd ever shown anyone. Her loneliness and his grief were 2 sides of the same coin. Before she could speak, her CTO approached one of the terminals, his face pale. Miss Hicks, You need to see this. He pulled up the origin trace the triplets had saved. The attack signature. It's not external. It's coming from inside our legacy systems. Someone with administrator access. Someone who knew our architecture intimately. Blanca leaned forward, her executive instincts overriding her emotional turmoil. She scanned the data, her eyes narrowing as recognition hit her like ice water. The signature was elegant, sophisticated, personal, and she knew exactly who designed it. "Marcus Webb," she whispered, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Her CTO nodded grimly. "Your former VP of Advanced Systems, the one you fired 3 years ago for attempting to sell client data to competitors," Blanca finished, her jaw clenching. "I didn't just fire him. I destroyed his reputation. Made sure he'd never work in this industry again." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't a random attack. This was revenge, calculated, deliberate, designed to hurt her the way she'd hurt him. Someone she'd mentored, someone she'd trusted, someone whose career she'd obliterated without a second thought. Blanca straightened, her eyes blazing with cold fury. "I want a full trace. Every digital footprint, every communication. I want to know where Marcus Webb is right now. And I want evidence that will put him in federal prison for the next 20 years. She turned to Danny, and for the first time in years, her voice carried something other than command. "I need your help." The conference room felt like a courtroom. Blanca sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her spine rigid, her expression carved from ice. Across from her, the board of directors stared with barely concealed contempt. 12 men and women in expensive suits, each one calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from the catastrophe. $6 billion, Chairman Gerald Hoffman said, his voice dripping with accusation. $6 billion in losses. Federal investigations pending. Client contracts in jeopardy. And all because of your vendetta against Marcus Webb. My vendetta? Blanca's voice could cut glass. Marcus Webb attempted to sell proprietary client data to our competitors. I had evidence. I followed protocol. You didn't just fire him, board member Patricia Chen interjected. You blacklisted him across the entire industry, made personal calls to ensure he'd never work again. That's not protocol, Blanca. That's personal. And now he's destroyed us, Hoffman continued. Used his insider knowledge to craft an attack we couldn't defend against. This breach has your fingerprints all over it. Your leadership, your decisions, your failures. Blanca felt the words land like physical blows, but she refused to flinch. We contained the breach, recovered the systems. The company is stable. Because 3 children solved what your entire team couldn't, Chen said coldly. That's not a victory, Blanca. That's an embarrassment. It proves you've surrounded yourself with incompetence, or worse, that your judgment has been compromised. Hoffman slid a folder across the table. The board has prepared removal documentation. Pending the federal investigation's outcome, we're recommending your immediate resignation as CEO. Effective today. For the first time in her career, Blanca felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She'd sacrificed everything for this company. Every relationship, every moment of happiness, every chance at a normal life. And now they were taking it away because she'd been too ruthless, too cold, too much of what they'd always rewarded her for being. The vote is scheduled for Monday, Hoffman said, standing. I suggest you prepare your transition plan. The board filed out, leaving Blanca alone in the silence. She stared at the folder, unopened, feeling the weight of her entire empire crumbling around her. Danny found her there an hour later, still sitting in the dark conference room, the city lights glowing through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. "They're going to fire me," Blanca said without looking up. "I heard," Danny said quietly, stepping inside. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Her voice was hollow. "They're right. This is my fault. I made Marcus Webb into an enemy when I could have just let him go quietly. I had to destroy him. Had to prove I was untouchable." Danny pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "You did what you thought was right." "Did I?" Blanca finally looked at him, and for the first time her armor was cracked. "Or did I do it because I've spent so long being cold and ruthless that I forgot how to be human?" Danny was quiet for a moment. "Marcus Webb sold out your clients. You stopped him. That was the right call. How you handled it after?" He paused. "Maybe that's something different. I can't undo it now." "No," Danny agreed. "But you can stop him from doing more damage. The trace the girls pulled shows he's still in the system. Dormant threads, back doors. He's planning something else." Blanca's head snapped up. "What?" "I've been analyzing the code structure. Marcus didn't just want to hurt you once. He built in contingencies. Fail-safes. This attack was just the opening move." Danny leaned forward. "I can help you stop him. Build better defenses. Close the vulnerabilities. But I can't do it alone." "Your daughters are home with a neighbor," Danny interrupted. "They've already isolated 3 of his backdoor protocols remotely. They're running security sweeps from my laptop." He smiled slightly. "They think it's homework." Despite everything, Blanca felt something like hope flicker in her chest. "You're really willing to help me? After everything I said to them? To you?" "You apologized," Danny said simply. "And you listened when they needed you to. That counts for something." Blanca stood, decision crystallizing. "Then let's make sure Marcus Webb regrets ever coming after my company." They worked through the night. Side by side in the operations center, Danny rebuilt security architecture while Blanca coordinated with her remaining team. He spoke in rapid technical language, his hands flying across keyboards with the muscle memory of his former life. She watched him work, seeing glimpses of the prodigy he'd once been. "Why did you really come back?" Blanca asked during a brief break, coffee cooling in her hands. "You swore off this world." Danny didn't look up from his screen. "Because my daughters believed it mattered. And because—" He hesitated. "Because hiding from what I'm good at doesn't honor Sarah's memory. It just means I'm letting guilt make my decisions instead of love." Blanca absorbed that, feeling it resonate somewhere deep inside her own carefully constructed walls. "I've spent 15 years alone," she admitted quietly. "Told myself it was strength, that attachments were weaknesses, that success required sacrifice." She laughed bitterly. "I sacrificed so much that there's nothing left but the company. And now they're taking that too." "You're not alone right now," Danny said, finally meeting her eyes. Something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. 2 people who'd each lost themselves in different ways, finding unexpected connection in shared catastrophe. "Back door sealed," Danny announced, breaking the moment. "That's the 4th one. The girls found 2 more in the satellite array. We're closing in." Hours blurred together. Code, coffee, conversation. Slowly, methodically, they dismantled Marcus Webb's revenge piece by piece. At 3 in the morning, Danny initiated the final countermeasure. A reverse trace that would expose every system Marcus had compromised, every move he'd planned, every thread he'd woven into Hicks Technologies' infrastructure. Deploying now, Danny said. The screen flashed green, then gold. System integrity restored, threats neutralized, evidence compiled. Blanca exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," Danny confirmed. Blanca reached for her phone to notify her security team, but it buzzed before she could dial. A new message. Unknown sender. She opened it, and ice flooded her veins. The message was simple. 5 words that destroyed her fragile hope. "This isn't over. MW." Blanca's hand trembled as she showed Danny the screen. His face went pale. "He knew we were coming. He's been watching us the whole time." Before either could respond, every screen in the operations center flashed red. A new attack. Bigger, faster, more devastating than before. And this time, Marcus Webb wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was declaring war. The headlines hit every major outlet by sunrise. 8-year-old Triplet save billion-dollar tech empire. The Reina cyber prodigies. 3 girls who humbled Silicon Valley's best. From janitor's daughters to national heroes. The miracle at Hicks Technologies. Blanca watched the news coverage from her office, exhaustion pulling at her bones. After Marcus Webb's second attack, it had taken another 18 hours of relentless work to shut him down completely. Federal agents had arrested him at a warehouse in Newark just before dawn, surrounded by servers still running his revenge protocols. It was over. Finally, truly over. But the media frenzy was just beginning. Her assistant knocked tentatively. "Miss Hicks, there are 47 interview requests. CNN, BBC, Tech Today, The Wall Street Journal. Everyone wants the story, and they all want to speak with the triplets." "No," Blanca said immediately. "No interviews with the girls. They're 8 years old. They don't need cameras in their faces." "But the publicity would be incredible for the company. The board is already discussing." "I said no." Blanca's voice carried the edge that made executives flinch. "Release a statement thanking them for their assistance. That's all." Her assistant nodded and retreated quickly. Blanca rubbed her temples. The board meeting was in 3 hours. They'd likely still push for her removal, good publicity or not. But right now, she had something more important to do. Something she should have done days ago. She found them in the employee lounge on the 3rd floor. Erica, Emily, and Edna sat at a small table, coloring in books that seemed far too simple for children who could dismantle quantum worms. Danny stood nearby, watching them with that gentle expression he always wore around his daughters. "Miss Hicks," he said, surprised. The triplets looked up, their identical faces curious but cautious. Blanca's carefully prepared speech evaporated. She knelt down to their level, something she'd never done for anyone in her professional life. "I owe you 3 an apology," she said quietly. "When you first came into my operations center, I said terrible things. I mocked you. I insulted your father. I treated you like you were worthless because of who I thought you were." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. And I'm sorry." The triplets exchanged one of their silent conversations, those identical brown eyes communicating in ways only they understood. Then Erica smiled. "It's okay, Miss Hicks. You were scared. People say mean things when they're scared." "You apologized," Emily added. "That's what matters." "And you let us help," Edna finished. "That took bravery too." Blanca felt tears threatening, something she hadn't experienced in years. These children, who she'd belittled and dismissed, were showing her more grace than he'd ever shown anyone. Thank you, she whispered. You saved everything I built. I won't forget that. You're welcome, they said in unison, and went back to their coloring like they hadn't just forgiven someone who didn't deserve it. Blanca stood, composing herself, and turned to Danny. Can we talk? Privately? They walked to the executive terrace, the city sprawling beneath them in morning light. I want to offer you a position, Blanca said without preamble. Chief Security Architect. Head of our new Quantum Defense Division. Full benefits, salary commensurate with your expertise, which I'm guessing is considerable. You'd have complete autonomy to build the team you want. Danny stared at her, stunned. Blanca, I can't. You can, she interrupted. You already proved that. These last few days, watching you work, I saw someone who's been hiding brilliance for 8 years because of guilt. She softened her voice. I understand that guilt. I've spent 15 years sacrificing everything for success, telling myself it was worth it. But standing in that conference room, facing the board, realizing I built an empire on loneliness. She paused. Your daughter saved my company. But you reminded me why companies matter in the first place. Not for profit. For the people. It's not that simple, Danny said, his voice strained. The last time I chose this work, Sarah died. Every time I touch a keyboard, I see her face. I hear her asking me to come home. Then maybe it's time to make new memories, Blanca said gently. Ones where you don't have to choose between your gift and your family. Where you can be both the father you are and the engineer you were. She looked at him directly. Your daughters are extraordinary because you taught them it was okay to be brilliant. Don't you deserve that same permission? Danny turned away, gripping the railing. I'm afraid. So am I, Blanca admitted. Afraid of losing the company. Afraid of facing the board. Afraid that I've spent so long being cold that I've forgotten how to be anything else. She moved beside him. But these last few days, working with you, talking with you, I've felt something I haven't felt in years. Hope. Connection. The possibility that maybe success doesn't have to mean being alone. Danny looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. The girls have been asking if they can come back, he said quietly. They loved helping. Felt like they made a difference. They did make a difference, Blanca said. And I want to make sure they can keep making one. I'm establishing a scholarship fund in their names. Full academic sponsorship, advanced programs, mentorship from the best minds in technology. She smiled slightly. Starting with their father. You've thought this through? I've thought about very little else. Blanca hesitated, then added, I've spent my whole life building walls, keeping people out, telling myself that success required isolation. But watching you with your daughters, seeing how you turned tragedy into something beautiful, her voice dropped. You didn't just save my company, Danny. You reminded me why saving it mattered. They stood in comfortable silence, the morning sun warming the terrace. Finally, Danny spoke. I'd need flexible hours, school events, emergencies, time with the girls. That's non-negotiable. Blanca's heart lifted. Of course. And I want to start small, consulting basis first. Make sure I can handle being back before committing fully. Whatever you need. Danny took a deep breath. And for the first time in 8 years, he let himself imagine a future that included both his daughters and his gift. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. Blanca smiled, genuine and warm, an expression that felt foreign, but right. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, he corrected, for giving me permission to stop punishing myself. And in that moment, on a terrace high above the city, two broken people began to heal. 3 months changed everything. The new Quantum Defense Division occupied the entire 7th floor, state-of-the-art systems humming beneath soft lighting that Danny had specifically chosen to reduce eye strain. His team of 12 specialists, handpicked from across the industry, worked with the kind of focused energy that came from genuine passion rather than fear. Blanca watched from the glass-walled observation room as Danny moved between workstations, answering questions, offering guidance, his presence transforming the space into something that felt less like a corporate division and more like a family. She barely recognized her own company anymore, or herself. The ruthless edge that had defined her leadership for 15 years had softened into something more sustainable, more human. She still demanded excellence, but now she asked about people's families, remembered birthdays, actually listened when employees spoke instead of simply waiting for her turn to command. The board had noticed. Surprisingly, they approved. Humanizing the brand, Chairman Hoffman had called it during last month's meeting, though his tone suggested he didn't fully understand what had shifted. He just knew the numbers were good and the press was better. Blanca didn't bother explaining. Some things couldn't be quantified in quarterly reports. Miss B. The nickname still startled her every time. Erica, Emily, and Edna bounded into her office, their matching backpacks bouncing. They visited twice a week now, after school, treating the executive floor like an extension of their home. We finished the encryption algorithm, Emily announced, pulling out a tablet covered in stylus marks and equations. The one for the satellite array? Blanca asked, setting aside her acquisition proposal to give them her full attention. That's the one, Edna confirmed. It's 93% more efficient than the current model and uses half the processing power. Dad said we should show you first, Erica added, climbing into one of the leather chairs that dwarfed her small frame. Before we present to the team. Blanca felt warmth spread through her chest. 3 months ago, she would have dismissed children in her office as an interruption. Now, she cleared her schedule whenever they appeared. Let's see what you've created, she said, coming around the desk to sit with them. The triplets had become legends in the building. Employees who'd initially whispered and smirked now greeted them with genuine affection. The security guards kept candy at their stations specifically for the girls. The cafeteria staff prepared special lunches on their visiting days. And the triplets bloomed under the attention. Their confidence, already remarkable, had grown into something beautiful. They asked questions without fear, challenged assumptions without hesitation, and treated everyone from interns to executives with the same respectful curiosity. They were everything Blanca had never let herself be. Brilliant and kind, confident and humble, successful without sacrificing their humanity. This is extraordinary work, Blanca said after reviewing their algorithm. Your father taught you well. He says you're teaching him too, Erica said, her tone matter-of-fact. He smiles more now. We like that. Blanca's breath caught. Does he? All three nodded with identical expressions of certainty. The shared lunches had started accidentally. Danny had been working through a system integration problem, too focused to break for food. Blanca had brought him a sandwich from the executive dining room, intending it as a quick gesture. He'd invited her to sit while he ate. They'd started talking about architecture, then shifted to music, then somehow ended up debating the best pizza toppings in the city. It became a routine. 3 times a week, sometimes more. Her corner office or his division floor. Always just the two of them. Always conversation that felt effortless. Blanca found herself watching for him in meetings, noticing when he was absent, feeling her mood lift when he appeared. She'd catch herself laughing at his dry observations, leaning closer when he spoke, finding excuses to extend their time together. And she wasn't alone in it. She'd seen the way his eyes tracked her across crowded rooms, the protective edge in his voice when other executives spoke dismissively near her, the way he unconsciously angled toward her in conversation, like a plant seeking sunlight. Neither of them had named it yet, but it was there, growing, undeniable. The federal investigation closed with a press conference that filled every major news outlet. Marcus Webb received a 12-year sentence for corporate espionage, cyber terrorism, and 17 counts of fraud. The FBI publicly thanked Hicks Technologies for their cooperation, specifically mentioning the Reyna family's instrumental role in identifying the breach and preventing further attacks on critical infrastructure. Danny watched from his office, the triplets beside him, as the news anchor described their contribution. "Does this feel weird?" Emily asked. "Being famous?" "We're not famous," Danny said. "We just did what needed to be done." "Like you always taught us," Edna added. "Exactly like that." Blanca appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "The FBI wants to offer the girls a commendation. Youngest civilians ever recognized for cybersecurity defense." "They're 8, Danny said, but he was smiling. "They're extraordinary," Blanca corrected. She looked at him, her expression soft. "Like their father." The triplets giggled, exchanging knowing glances. "We're going to get snacks," Erica announced, already heading for the door. "The vending machines are that way," Danny called after them. "We know," they chorused, disappearing around the corner with suspicious speed. Alone, Blanca stepped fully into the office. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. Danny turned from the window, giving her his complete attention. "These last 3 months have been the best of my professional life," Blanca continued. "Not because of the company's success or the positive press. Because of you. Because working with you, talking with you, learning from you has reminded me that brilliance doesn't have to be cold. That success doesn't require isolation." She paused, gathering courage. "I admire you, Danny. Not just as an engineer, as a person, as a father, as someone who took unimaginable pain and transformed it into something beautiful." Danny crossed the space between them. "I need to tell you something too." Blanca waited, heart pounding. "I forgive myself," Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. "For Sarah's death. For all the years I spent punishing myself instead of living. I forgive myself because—" He reached for her hand. "Because she would have wanted me to be happy. And for the first time since I lost her, I think I could be." "Danny," Blanca whispered. "You gave me that," he continued. "Permission to stop carrying guilt like a shield. Permission to be whole again." They stood in the soft afternoon light, hands joined, something profound passing between them. Before either could speak again, Blanca's phone buzzed. A message from Erica, Emily, and Edna. "Please come to the operations center tonight, 7 o'clock. We have a surprise. Don't be late." The triplets. Blanca showed Danny the screen. He laughed. "They're planning something." "Should I be worried?" "Probably," Danny admitted. "But with them, it's usually worth it." Blanca smiled, still holding his hand, feeling the future shifting into something neither of them had expected. Something that felt remarkably like hope. The operations center was dark when Blanca arrived at 7 o'clock. She paused at the doorway, her hand on the frame, memories flooding back with visceral intensity. This room, this exact space where her empire had collapsed, where she'd screamed at 3 little girls for daring to interrupt her catastrophe, where everything she'd built had nearly burned to ash. The same room where everything had changed. "Hello?" she called softly, stepping inside. The emergency lighting flickered on, casting long shadows across the empty workstations. The massive screens that had flashed crimson warnings 3 months ago now glowed with a gentle blue standby mode. Then she saw them. Erica, Emily, and Edna stood in the center of the room, matching grins stretched across their faces. Each held a large neon sign, the kind used at concerts and celebrations. All 3 signs read the same word: "Yes!" Blanca's breath caught. "Girls, what?" Movement to her left. Danny stepped out from behind a server bank, and her heart stumbled over itself. He wore a suit. Not the janitor's uniform or the casual button-downs he favored for work, but an actual tailored suit that made him look like the prodigy engineer he'd once been. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were clear, determined. "Blanca," he said, and his voice carried through the quiet room like a promise. He walked toward her, the triplets parting to let him through, their neon signs glowing softly in the dim light. And then, in the exact spot where Blanca had stood 3 months ago watching her world crumble, Danny Reyna dropped to one knee. "Wait," Blanca whispered, tears already threatening. "Danny, Let me say this first," he interrupted gently. "Please." She nodded, unable to speak. Danny took a breath. "This room broke you. I saw it happen. Watched everything you'd sacrificed for, everything you'd built, nearly disappear in minutes. You stood right there. And I saw the strongest person I'd ever met face the possibility of losing everything." Blanca's vision blurred. "But this room also saved me," Danny continued, his voice thick with emotion. "My daughters walked through that door, and for the first time in 8 years, I watched them shine without my guilt dimming their light. I watched them be brilliant and brave and extraordinary. And I watched you, this fierce, terrifying CEO, let 3 little girls prove themselves when you had every reason to say no." The triplets beamed, their signs still held high. "In this room, I learned that coming back to who I was doesn't betray who I lost. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting. That Sarah would have wanted me to live, not just survive." He reached for Blanca's hand. "You gave me that gift. You saw past the janitor's uniform, and the grief and the fear, and you reminded me that I was allowed to be whole." "Danny," Blanca breathed, "this room was the worst moment of your life and the turning point of mine," he said. "So I wanted to come back here, to this exact spot, and ask you something." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "Let's rebuild something new. Together. Not just as colleagues or friends, but as partners. As family." He looked up at her, his eyes glistening. "Blanca Hicks, will you marry me?" The tears Blanca had held back for years, for decades, finally broke free. They streamed down her face as she stared at this man who'd lost everything, and somehow found the courage to risk his heart again. This father who'd turned tragedy into triumph. This engineer who'd reminded her that brilliance and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, stronger. "Yes." The triplets erupted in cheers, their neon signs bouncing wildly as they rushed forward. Danny stood, slipping the ring onto Blanca's finger with shaking hands. And then she was in his arms, crying and laughing simultaneously. Erica, Emily, and Edna crashed into them both, wrapping their small arms around the adults in a tangle of limbs and joy. "We knew you'd say yes," Emily announced confidently. "We've been planning this for weeks," Edna added. "Dad was so nervous," Erica stage whispered. "He practiced his speech like 50 times. Danny laughed, pulling his daughters closer while keeping one arm around Blanca. "I wanted it to be perfect." "It was perfect," Blanca said, her voice breaking on the words. She looked down at the 3 little girls who'd saved her company and somehow saved her soul. "You're all perfect." "Does this mean you're going to be our mom?" Emily asked, tilting her head with curious hope. Blanca's heart cracked open completely. She knelt down to their level just like she had months ago when she'd apologized. But this time, there was no guilt, only love. "If you'll have me," she said softly. "I know I can't replace your mother. I would never try, but I would be honored to be part of your family." The triplets exchanged one of their silent conversations, those identical brown eyes communicating in their mysterious language. Then all 3 nodded in unison. "We'd like that, Miss B." "Just Blanca," she corrected gently. "Or whatever feels right to you." Erica hugged her first, then Emily, then Edna. Blanca held them, these brilliant, brave, beautiful children who'd wandered into her crisis and changed everything. Danny wrapped his arms around all of them, creating a circle of warmth in the room that had once held only panic and fear. Around them, the screens glowed softly blue. The same monitors that had flashed catastrophic warnings now displayed stable system readings. Peaceful, secure, protected. The operations center, once a battlefield, had become something else entirely, a beginning. Blanca looked up at Danny over the triplets' heads, and in his eyes she saw the future they'd build together. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real, human, full of the messy, complicated, beautiful chaos that came with letting people in, with choosing connection over control, with becoming a family. "I love you," she whispered, the words foreign but true. "I love you too," Danny replied. "All of us do." The triplets squeezed tighter, their neon yes signs abandoned on the floor, glowing like beacons in the gentle darkness. And in that moment, in the room where Blanca Hicks had once lost everything, she found what she'd been missing her entire life. Not an empire, a home. Sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones who save it. The janitor mopping floors while brilliance hides beneath a uniform. The children dismissed as interruptions who carry genius in their small hands. The broken souls who've learned that strength isn't about walls. It's about the courage to let them crumble. And sometimes the family you never expected, forged in crisis and built on forgiveness, becomes the one you can't imagine living without. The one worth more than any empire. The one that finally, truly, feels like home. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe right now.